Hello, everybody, and welcome to Angel Meadows, a conversation with friends. My guest this evening, who I kind of sort of tortured his name on a Facebook Live, but his name is Michael Bradford. He's new in my circle of friends, but a very interesting connection that we've made, and I think that there's going to be a lot of people very excited to get to know you. Michael, first off, thank you for agreeing to be on my show and not being scared because I can't. Oh, yeah, we're going to have a good time. And he kind of went, oops. He said yes, and then I sprung it on him. It's a crazy way. It's a crazy house. So welcome, Michael, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
For those people, which is pretty much everybody in the chat room and listening on the archives, who don't know you, tell everybody a little bit about yourself before I dive into the deep and dark dungeons of Michael Bradford.
Oh boy. Well, I'm kind of very different because a lot of people will be either business oriented or spiritually oriented, and I'm kind of both at the same time. And I've integrated the two, which has been very different. Do you want me to go into a little of my history now, or do you want to wait, or how do you want to do it?
You are so difficult to get along with.
Oh.
No, you're not. Go ahead. You tell what you got to tell. Every part that you want to tell, except for don't be telling those stories yet. I'm waiting for that one. And I'll take notes and we'll ask questions on what I take notes. Go for it.
Started out this lifetime coming into planet Earth with needing to heal, choosing to heal my emotional body. So my mental body, physical body, and spiritual body was very strong, is very strong. However, my Achilles heel was my emotional body. So coming into this planet, I came in very, very sensitive. I came in as an empath. I'm probably one of the few men on the planet that has suffered from menstrual cramps, and also am so sensitive that I can get drunk by just drinking water and being around other people that are drinking heavily, and I'll energetically pick it up. So,
Damn.
coming into this planet was very challenging for me. And growing up, I wanted to understand, I wanted to feel safe, I wanted to understand things. And the only thing I could understand that made any sense was math and science and things of that nature. And I went on that path pretty much through high school, college, um, and wound up going as far as getting a master's degree in international management. And then around 1979, um, I had a spiritual experience, as actually I had a number of them in growing up, where I made a decision to walk away from the corporate world and start a journey that took me to every state in the United States, including the state of confusion, and 50 some odd countries, where I was traveling and studying with Native American medicine people, Canadian medicine people, an Eskimo shaman, Peruvian shamans. I worked for weeks on end in the healing rooms with helping the psychic surgeons from the Philippines. And I've worked with the Maoris in New Zealand, spent time with them, quality time. And after walking away from the corporate world in 1979, I had no clue where I was going or what I was doing. I just kept on following the yellow brick road, following the breadcrumbs, following my intuition. And it's been a very, very interesting journey. I didn't go to be a healer. I didn't go to be a shaman, medicine person, or anything like that. What I went for is my own healing because I was in emotional pain, very confused, very overloaded, very oversensitive. And as I was working with these shamans, medicine people, etc., I would sit and wait my turn and I'd watch them work. And then I'd say, well, I could see it's not working. Why don't you try over here to this other area? And they'd look at me, and after a while, I said, if you're so smart, go ahead, try it. And it worked. And then the shamans and the medicine people started bringing me the clients that they couldn't help, and then they started bringing me their families. Then eventually the shamans and healers started coming to me themselves. And I've had a lot of experiences, which you wanted to talk about when you're ready, about working with animals and even having plants communicate with me. So it's been a very interesting journey and very humbling journey. I like to sit now in quiet, and the word that comes up for me is savor the connections with people, savor the connections with the land, savor the connections, even working with clients, helping them to look at what their next step is. Where's the energy blockage? What's happening in their body? What's happening in their energy field? And something happened to me many, many years ago when I was living in Portland, Oregon. I put together a men's group, and we had a medical doctor, chiropractor, massage therapist, 12 different men, and we would meet at my house every Tuesday night, I think it was. We'd put up a massage table, and whoever wanted to work would jump on the table. Now, everybody was dressed. It wasn't, anything like that. But and then the other people would start working, looking, oh, we're seeing this, we're seeing that, we're seeing the other thing. And I wouldn't see what they were seeing. I see something totally different. I thought it was nuts. And after they worked for 15 minutes, a half an hour, sometimes longer, then they'd get down to the level that I was seeing. And it was very interesting because what I realized years later is they were working through the layers of the onion. So they were working one layer through another layer, through another layer, through another layer. And what I was doing was seeing the exact core issue that was a central theme, that when that was released, everything else would shift. So my life has been different in the fact that I've been, okay, I'll say it a different way. Where other people are okay in sensitive environments or in environments where people are in a lot of pain, painful for me. So what's happened in that process is, whether it's my guides, my teachers, my higher self, whatever it is, I've learned, because it's too painful for me to listen to people's stories, I've learned almost instantaneously to go to the direct core issue that the person is having, identify it, and help them clear it without going into the story, the trauma, the drama, the heightened emotions. What's really interesting with that is when that happens, there isn't a lot of trauma or drama that comes out. There isn't even a lot of pain and suffering. It happens almost instantaneous in a way that allows the person to shift and be free. Do you want to ask any questions, or?
Yeah, I do. I got a couple.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so no, never apologize. It doesn't work. Do you think, because you're empathic, because you could feel this pain, because you could, which is a good thing you weren't around me yesterday, because I had a nice little glass of rosé wine. Do you think, because you're empathic and it gets everything that affected you at your core, that when you were helping people to heal, whereas everybody else saw the layers, because you knew what your core problem was, you could see their core. You could see what exactly you would get past, because you get past all the fluff and the different layers of onion, even though they were important to those people, because you knew what your core was. You knew exactly but you knew exactly what was your problem, because you attracted and you felt and everything was there, that when you saw somebody's pain, you saw exactly the center of you didn't have to go through the layers.
Well, I've got some tears welling up in my eyes, and you told me this is going to be a really, really open and powerful session, so I'm going to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
For myself and for many other people, when we come into planet Earth, the veil shuts, and we forget who we really are.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, and I've been blessed with a lot of phenomenal teachers and associates along the way. And they told me, they said, Michael, you're a healer of healers. You're a teacher of teachers. Your job is not necessarily to work with the masses, but your job is to work with those people that are talented and gifted, to help them, because when you're doing that, it multiplies the amount of people that can be helped. The other thing that I was told is that I was from a planet of healers where this planet developed the best healers in the entire universe. And I was also told that I'm part of a vanguard team that has come here to Earth. However, most of my people, most of my tribe are not here on the planet at this point in time. That I'm here more as a scouting party or vanguard team, and the rest will come later on, which has helped me to understand some of the loneliness and some of the hunger for meeting people that I can relate to and talk to.
Mm-hmm. One little comment from the chat room. There's a few little gibberish comments there, but the one that Scott said, and it rings well, is that generally healers take the least care of themselves. They're so busy healing others, we forget to take care of ourselves. You forget to take, or it's harder for us to decide what exactly we know what our problem is as healers, but it's easier to help somebody else to heal than it is for us to heal ourselves. So yeah.
Okay, for me, I've been working on myself consciously for over 40 years. Even now, I'm working with 3 or 4 different healers. So a lot of healers, they're in a situation where you're right, they may not want to, they want to control the outside. They want to fix other people so their pain stops. That is definitely one of the situations that happens. However, for me, I've been working on myself for the past 40 years with every healer, shaman, medicine person that I could find, psychic, intuitive. So for me, I've been doing my best to keep on working on myself and shifting my frequency and vibration. And I mean, part of it is we've got the energy of the planet shifting. So we've got the internal structure pushing us, the frequency and vibration of the world, and then we have our own internal desire to want to learn, change, heal, and grow. Did you want to ask another question or make another statement?
You said you left your corporate job. You're going to get used to this. I kind of bounce all over the place. There's no rhyme or reason how I do things. I just do them. Well, when you left the corporate world in 79, you were... Sorry?
Yeah, 1979, 1980. Go ahead.
Okay. You went in search of healing for yourself? So this is how you met the medicine men and the shamans and different healers?
Prior to 79, 1980, I was working probably 60 hours a week at the job. I was president of a corporation. I basically was retired when I was 79. Back in 19.
You're aging backwards, darling.
That's okay. So I was basically retired at that time. I was president of a corporation, owned 10% of the company, had a company car, had a 4-bedroom house I lived in alone, had stocks, had a rent house that I owned. I was basically retired, or could have retired when I was about 35 years old. And that's when this energy just started moving within me, and I walked away from the corporate world. And that's what started me on the journey. I had been on the journey before. However, that really actively pushed me out where I had the time to travel, because when I was in the company, I only had, even though I was president of the company, I only had 2 weeks a year vacation. Plus I was working 60 hours a week. It doesn't give you a lot of time to really delve into other areas.
So what does your family think about your search for healing and the healing that you do?
Well, let's put it this way. I left home when I was 18,
Mm-hmm.
and my family didn't know what to do with me because I didn't fit into the family structure. So basically, I was pretty much an outcast. Even the people I was close, my cousin, who I was very close with, he passed away last Thanksgiving. He had my 2 books on his coffee table, but he never would look at them, and he would never discuss it with me, and I couldn't discuss any of my attitudes or beliefs with him. So in my family system, I had zero support for who I was, what I believed in, and basically, if I wanted to be around my family, I had to be quiet and keep my mouth shut.
Whereas a lot of people who've been through that. So to this day, does your family still feel the same way? I know you said your cousin passed away last year, but the rest of the family that's still here, do they still have that feeling?
There's no one in my family that I'm close to. And I will say this, there are those of us that came in that we have close ties with our family, our blood family.
Mm-hmm.
There's others of us that have come in where we have a soul family, but it's not our blood family.
Agreed.
I'll also say to you that there's those of us that have come in where we don't have our blood family, our soul family isn't here, but they're in spirit and they work with us from the other side. And each one has its own challenges.
Okay. Is there, of all the people that you've worked with, all the teachers and the healers and the medicine men, is there one that sort of stands out in your mind that taught you, that gave you that aha moment of exactly, you just like, you kind of knew where you were going, but there was just that one individual that kind of, without realizing it, gave you that verbal smack upside the head and said, this is exactly what you're here for?
Well, as you're talking to me, I've got tears welling up in my eyes because
I want to make you cry before the night's over. I'm sorry.
okay, they're good tears. There was a woman I met in Sedona, Arizona by the name of Zelina Tenney. And Zelina spent her childhood in an iron lung. And the dolphins came and visited her. And they taught her. And Zelina was probably one of the most innocent, kind, gentle, caring people I've ever met in my life. And she was a trance channel. She channeled someone called the Wise One. And in impeccable integrity, impeccable information. She was one. There's others. I don't remember their names, but they could look at a person, see the chakras, see what was blocking the chakras, see the past life inside the chakras. There was a guy I met in New Zealand who had the sign on his booth that said free energy scan. I said, do me. And he held up in his finger and he went throughout my body. I actually could feel him inside my body. There are many, many people I met who were exquisite, all very, very different. A lot of these were self-taught. They weren't, or spirit taught them. It wasn't that they went through any specific school to learn it. And a lot of the people that I've met that were really extremely high quality learned from spirit. It wasn't about money or power for them. And they were very, very gentle souls. So each one, if I had to tell you how many teachers I've met, it would be in the hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
And each one I watch, each one I listen. For me, when I've been with the medicine people and the shamans, it's been very strange because it's not like I'm learning. It's like I watch them and I go, oh, I remember that. Or I remember how to do that. I remember that past life. Or I remember that technique. Or wait a minute, I know something even better than that technique. And I don't mean to say that in a way of arrogance. And for me, there's been a way that these pieces have come together to create 1 and 1 is equal to 3, or 1 and 1 is equal to 5. A way that these different techniques come together. And there's a lot of times when I'll sit there working with a client and I'll go, and I'll be listening to them, and I'll get guidance to say or do something that's off the walls. And I've had a lot of people on my support team say, Michael, you're crazy. And I go, I know, just wait. And it's always seemed to work out. There's even times when my guides and teachers have said, Michael, you're crazy. We're not going there. And I said, that's okay. I'll see you when I get back. And I've gone in, done the intervention, and have seen miracle after miracle after miracle. I know they're not miracles, but some people would call them miracles.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. I'll let you ask another question.
So I've got so many questions. Let's to give you a break on delving deep into the darkness. I want, because you've mentioned it twice, and I really do want everybody to hear, and I want to hear it again myself, the story of the dolphins. But first, let's lead up to how you came to meet. What brought you to the dolphins?
Well, the dolphins, first of all, I love animals. I relate more to animals and nature than I do to humans, I think. I do well with children, too. And back in 1991-ish, I wanted to swim with the dolphins, so I flew from Oregon to Florida, went down to Florida Keys, and went out on a number of different boats, or in a number of different situations. I think 2 or 3 of the situations were where the dolphins were in pens, so they were captive dolphins. That didn't interest me that much. And then I went out on a boat, a trimaran or catamaran, where you were on a pull cord behind the boat. And I'm a pretty good swimmer and I love to snorkel. So other people got tired and I just said, I'll stay out there. So I did. And there were a number of times when I was swimming with the dolphins. One time I let go and swam with this one pod, and I think it was a mother, an adolescent, and a baby. And I swam with them for a while, and then just as it was time to go or whatever, the mother turned to me and echoed me. And it must have shifted something for me, because I wound up with 104 fever for 11 days afterwards. So my body, I thought I'd picked up some kind of a virus or something from the dolphins, but other people told me later on, years later, that what happened is my frequency and vibration was being shifted and readjusted. And that was actually a major breakthrough for me, and I was burning up a lot of karma. See, part of the challenge is we as humans want to make meaning out of everything. That's what our mind wants to do. We want to make meaning. So what happens is, like I said, I thought I had over $1,000 worth of blood work done in 1992.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't find anything wrong with me. And yet I had 104 fever for 11 days. And luckily, a friend of mine was a homeopath. I called him up, and he sent me something called China. And when I took the remedy, boom, it totally cleared. So that was one situation. I'm trying to think of what year I was actually in Egypt. Many years later, and I went to Dahab and Nuweiba, and there were some deaf mute Bedouins there, and for whatever reason, there was this one dolphin that stayed there, and I camped on a beach. I mean, there was nothing there. It was just wide open beaches. It wasn't developed or anything. And I was able to go out very early in the morning before the buses of tourists came, because other people, want to swim with the dolphin, and they knew it was there. So I swam out, and I actually had this wild dolphin. I need to move this. Okay. This wild dolphin actually came up and gave me a full body hug. And it was the most amazing, phenomenal thing that I've ever experienced in my life. I've had other times where I've swam with dolphins, other times when other things have happened, and I shared also with you that I was in New Zealand, and I had bought some plant remedies from this young woman, and I took the one dosage, and then I went back to see her to get a second dosage, and she had like this hippie van with all these different bottles in the back, and I'm standing there, I don't know, about 6-8 feet away from her, and she's in the rummaging around in the back of the van looking at the bottle. She looks over at me and she says, huh. She says, the kawa plant's sitting there and it likes you. And then all of a sudden the kawa plant jumped into my body. And what's amazing is the kawa plant is the main medicinal plant of the Maoris in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the plant is shaped, it's like a heart. The leaves of the kawa plant are just like a heart. And I could feel my whole body flutter and adjust. So whenever we're in a situation where we're open, we're receptive, we're inviting, things can happen. Absolutely amazing things can happen. And walking on the land, there's a lot of times when the land has talked to me. One of the things I've done is everything from house clearings to when people have properties they can't rent or even commercial pieces of property. I'll walk the land and I'll ask the spirits, what's going on? What needs to clear? What needs to move this energy?
Mm-hmm.
And be able to get information to where I can help and negotiate so that the energy is more smooth and aligned. I'll give you a couple examples. I was in New Zealand, and I was told about this farm that had a lot of problems. Things kept breaking down, going bad, and they invited me to come out and visit them. Well, I went out to visit them, and when I walked the land, what I felt was like these prehistoric monsters energetically coming into this plane. And in talking with them, they were pissed off because our energies was going into their plane. So we had this situation where there was both energies were contaminating the other plane, and I brokered a deal where we would stay on our side and they would stay on their side, and we'd ask for that veil to be strengthened and to be respectful so that both people would be able to have their own space. A lot of these things I've scratched my head and go, am I crackers or is this really real? And it just keeps happening so many times where there is confirmation of other dimensions, there's confirmations of other beings, there's confirmations of beings of light, prayers answered, manifestation, where I've just learned to trust it and surrender into it and just go with the flow. Just keep asking, what can I do to serve? What can I do to help?
Sorry.
You're
People are
right.
popping in and out of the chat room. Now, you have two books. One which is Mastering the Human Experience, Your Soul's Journey on Earth, and also The Healing Energy of Your Hands. I did not get a chance to get the books before the show, but I will get the books, and you will come back and we'll talk about the books. But one thing is the stories that you're telling from the different meetings with the healers and the shamans and the medicine men. And I swear I didn't. Sorry, guys. I swear I did not kick Brian out of the chat room, okay? Even though it was tempting, but I'm glad to have him here. Have you chosen to write a book telling your stories? Sorry.
Okay. My first book was the Healing Energy of Your Hands. I was visiting Findhorn in Scotland, and it was very strange because they called me up. They had heard about me, and they said, Michael, the guy that was supposed to do this workshop on hypnosis, NLP, and other things got sick. Do you want to do the workshop? And I said, sure. No one knew me up there, and I wound up doing the workshop and connecting with a bunch of people up there, including a medical doctor and a teenage boy. Well, the following week, actually the previous week, I had given my manuscript for the book, the first time I ever presented the manuscript to a publisher, to Findhorn Press in Scotland. And what happened was the medical doctor that was in the class wound up endorsing my book. And the boy who I connected with there was was the son of the woman that was the head editor of the book that I just handed to the publisher at Findhorn. So what happened was they took the book and they only had to change one word in the whole book. That's the editing process they were very happy with. They only had to change one word. And they took the book and it wound up being published in 12 languages. And it was voted by One Spirit Book of the Month as their book of the month and taken on. So that book was very, very well received. And that was written published in 1995. However, I've progressed to the point where I don't need to use my hands for healing anymore. All I have to do is connect with a person and talk to them, and then I watch what happens with the energy. I tell them what I see and ask them if they're willing to let go of certain belief systems, and I watch what they're doing and I track their energy. So almost all my work right now is on Skype internationally. My second book, or actually it's my third, but I'll call it my second, I wanted to write a foundation book. I had lots of clients. They were great people, but they didn't understand how everything fit together. They didn't understand completely. I'm not sure any of us really understand completely, but the connection between guides, teachers, the higher self, where we came from, the decisions we made, what happens when we come to Earth, what happens when the egg gets fertilized, what happens when we're in the womb, what happens at birth, what happens 0 to age 7. All these things I talk about: miscarriages, abortions, guilt, shame. I talk about both books are excellent for people dealing with the 12-step program, any kind of addiction or recovery. So the book I've just written, Mastering the Human Experience, Your Soul's Journey on Earth, goes into that very deeply. And a lot of people have said, Michael, we didn't understand the big picture. And these are spiritual people. Now, I'm not saying that that is the deepest book ever written, but it's written as a broad foundation for people on the spiritual path. I also share a lot in there about tying in, this is what I'm talking about, and here are experiences that I've had in the healing rooms. This is experience I've had with clients, so that people understand, how does this fit in? What are the possibilities? I'll give you an example. There was a couple, as we're talking, I'm getting guidance and pictures, so I'll just share what I'm getting. When I'm not going to share which country it was, but I was talking to a senior manager in an investment company. And as usually happens with people, I'll get into a personal conversation. And the guy shared with me, he said, Michael, my wife has had, or we've had a couple of miscarriages, and we really want a child. However, you know, my wife's pregnant again, and immediately I got, this child is not going to stay. Mm-hmm. I said, please see me for a private session. Now, normally, if I'm dealing with a couple, I'll deal with them separately. I won't deal with them together.
Okay.
But in this case, my guidance came through, and again, I rely almost 100% on my intuition, maybe 150%. And my intuition said, see them together. And when I saw them together, they both started crying, because both of them had been sexually abused as a child. Both of them wanted a child that they could guarantee that they could protect the child. And what I did is I worked with them on their pain. I worked with them on their suffering. I worked with them on their belief system that said they didn't want to bring a child into this earth unless they could absolutely, totally guarantee that this child would be safe. And what happened for me was, my guidance was to help them to understand that they could not guarantee anything to anybody. That what was happening is that child has its own destiny, and that all they can do is provide the love and the support for that child. So in working with them, what happened was I did, and this all happened in a 1-hour session. Mm-hmm. Most of my sessions are 1 hour, and that's it. And months later, I get a phone call, Michael, thank you. The child was born healthy, and the child was born, everything was fine. They said, Michael, we didn't think we'll have the child if it wasn't for you. I have another child's story that just popped into my mind, and I'd like to share this, because this is one of the most amazing stories of my life. There was a woman in Jerusalem who was pregnant, and at about 7 months in utero, her baby daughter stopped taking nutrients. She froze. The baby just froze and wasn't taking nutrients. What they said was that they were thinking about having a C-section done to take this baby out premature. So the woman in Jerusalem called a friend of hers in Paris and said, help, what do I do? The woman in Paris talked to a friend of hers. I can't remember if I was in England at the time or the United States. I think it was in the United States. Called a person in the United States and said, help, my friend needs help. And then they contacted me. So I was actually working through So I'm trying to get this right. I was actually working through two intermediaries who didn't even know each other, reading the energy and then giving it back. And what I told them was, I said, does this child, do the parents have another child, a boy? And I got the feedback, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this boy was a tyrant. And this little girl froze, and she didn't know if she was going to come in or not. A child has the right to terminate its life because it's scared and doesn't feel safe. So what happened is I got the information to the parents about what was going on in the baby's mind, in the fetus's mind, gave that through the intermediaries. And what happened was I got feedback that they were going to talk to the son.
Okay.
Didn't hear anything back and this is again 1 hour or so. Months later, I get a phone call back. Michael, the little girl is fine. What happened was the parents sat down and talked to the boy. And when the little girl was born, the little boy, rather than throwing a temper tantrum, walked into the room where the mother was in the hospital, where the mother was holding a baby, without grabbing the attention of everybody in the room. The child slowly walked over to the baby, gave the little baby a kiss on the forehead, and was totally nice to that child. That it's one thing when you're working directly with people.
Yeah.
It's another thing when you're working through a couple of intermediaries. Anyway, I love telling stories, and I love sharing because it's amazing what is possible,
Mm-hmm.
and it's amazing what the potential is. I've got a business story I could tell you.
Well, hang on one second. Did the parents of the child, did they ever tell you what they sat down and talked to the young boy about?
Basically, it was about them. No, I don't know the details. I just know
Okay.
that they needed to talk to that child. And whatever happened, I gave them the basic information,
Mm.
and their whole everything changed. All I'm doing. Oh, okay, thank you. Getting lots of guidance here when we're talking. Someone once said, Michael, do you know what you're doing? I say, heck no, I just do it. And they said, Michael, you're acting like an attorney. You're renegotiating karmic contracts for people. You're helping people to be free. And I've actually developed a way to call forth the karmic board,
Mm-hmm.
specific cases, and actually negotiate with the karmic board to help people. It's a little far out, I know it is.
No. Hello, you're on my show. Nothing's far out for this show. Just for information, anybody who wants to connect with Michael, I have put his links to his Facebook page into the chat room. That's not his personal Facebook page. That's his fan Facebook page. I forgot to get the website address, but there's also the Goodreads page and the Amazon page if you want to get his books. But get his books, and when we bring him back, we'll talk about the books, and you'll be able to ask questions from the book. Okay. And yes, I agree. Your stories, you love telling stories, but what I find from people who are storytellers, is that you may not realize it, but you're teaching people. You're showing them what is possible.
Absolutely.
You know, because some people have to have the physical but a lot of people just need to hear, from somebody who's trustworthy and respected type of thing, to understand the stories of what they went through. So telling people the stories that you had a hand in, you went through the different healers, the different things, people that you healed, the different connections you had with the animals. That's a way of showing, of teaching us.
There's another thing that's happening that I was told, which I wasn't aware of. Spirit is actually I've been told that Spirit is actually putting healing energy on my voice and my words.
Excellent.
So one of the things that I'm willing to do for the radio listener audience, which I've never done before, is if you send me your email, and my email is michael@michaelbradford.com, if you send me your email, I will send you a free, how do you like that? A free copy of my meditation, which I call the Sacred Healing Room, which is actually designed to help people to heal, change, and transform. And I've never offered this before, so I'm willing to do that.
Okay.
So
Go
I
ahead.
see your.
I'm searching your.
Go
Go ahead. I'm going to type your email into the chat room. Yes, please, because I can't seem to find it in my email address. But yes, plus your stories show fellow healers, Scott and myself and everybody else that's a healer, that things work, and give ideas of how to help other people as well.
I'd like to.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Or you can ask me a question.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I want to share another story just to show you the breadth of what it is, because I work in the areas of health and healing, personal excellence and spiritual growth, entrepreneurship, business, wealth creation, etc. And what's interesting for me, I don't see any difference in any of them. It's all working with energy, and it's all working with looking at what's going on. So you have the law of attraction, you have law of manifestation. The question is, if a person's not receiving their worth and living their dream, then what's blocking them? And again, I can just look in and tune in and see what's going on. One of the things that really surprised me, I was invited by a company to speak to them. This company was an international company. They had their own personal development department, and they invited me to fly in and speak to their international group. So I did. And in the room, as I said, they had their own personal development department, which about 50 people. I went to speak to them, and as I'm getting up to the podium, they say to me, Michael, you realize you can't touch anyone here, and you can't work with anyone here. And I'm sitting there going, okay. So I went ahead and started talking, but I was fighting myself because it's not the way. If I'm going to give a talk or a lecture, I need to be able to demonstrate things, because there's no model for what I do except the gurus in India that can just go and clear the karma, but they're not allowed to do it because the person won't learn the lessons. Yeah. So my focus is on helping people learn their lessons so they move faster on their spiritual growth and live a happier life and get what they want. So here I am in front of this group of about 50 people, including the top CEOs in the company. And I'm talking, and I finally, after 10 minutes, 10 minutes, I sit there and say, I can't do this. I'm sorry. I said, you have no idea what I'm talking about, because there's no model for it. So the only way I could do it is by showing you. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't go on. Well, you talk about a room that got quiet. These people didn't know what to do with me. Finally, the head trainer, who was in his late 30s, was in the back of the room, and he stood up, and he was shaking. He said, "I don't know what you got, but I want it." And I'm sitting there going, looking around, and again, everyone's looking at the floor. And I finally said, after a couple of minutes, I said, what do I have to lose? And I asked him to come up in front of the room. And normally when I'm working with someone, I'm right next to them because I want to support them. I want my energy field to be there, and I want to support and nurture them. And with this person, I did something very different. I moved more towards the back of the room. And I said, "How may I serve you?" And the guy said, "Michael, I've been in counseling and therapy for over 13 years working on my mother issues." Now, this is the head trainer, the best of the best in the company. 13 years he was in counseling and therapy, and he couldn't crack it. He said, "Michael, I've been working on my mother issues for 13 years. I can't crack it. What am I missing?" Darlene, I just looked at him, shrugged my shoulders, said, "It's easy." I said, "It's not your mother, it's your father." I said, "Did your father ever tell you he loved you and he respected you?" Huge explosion of emotions, hysterical crying. And it looked like he grew 3 inches taller. That's all he needed, was that one single piece of information.
Yeah.
I wish I could have been paid what he paid in those 13 years of counseling and therapy. And again, he was the best of the best in that company. There was another woman there who was very, very sensitive. And she said, "Michael, I want to be a trainer, but I'm too sensitive. I go in overload." And I said, "Do you mind coming in front of the room?" She came in front of the room. This woman's energy field was out 25, 50 feet from her body. And a healthy energy field should only be out, I would say, maybe between a foot to 3 feet. And I showed her how to monitor her energy, how to bring it in, and how to seal it. This whole thing took a couple of minutes. And the woman just looks at me and goes, "Oh my God, do I feel powerful?" And again, it's not about time, it's about precision. Anyway, ask me some more questions or I'll keep telling stories.
You can keep telling stories because you wouldn't believe how much you're teaching people. And okay, just a quick note, I put it in. Okay, so it's Michael at michaelbradford.com. You tell him in the subject line that you heard him on my show, so that he'll know it's not just some run-of-the-mill quack. It's it's a quack from my show, which is always a positively positive, I hope. And then he'll get back to you on the gifts that he's offered. And every little thing is going to be all right. There you go. Got that song in my head now. And Carrie has already sent you an email. So we're starting off with a bang. Oh, so it's Scott. Now you do many things. You are a hypnotherapist, an NLP. Now you're going to have to explain that one to me. I think I know what it is, but not sure. What other areas of healing do you use?
I have training in tons of different things. However, the only thing that I do anymore is just look at a person or listen to their voice, and I tune into what they need.
Okay.
So in other words, yes, I have NLP master and trainer. I've been doing NLP since 1983. Hypnosis I learned in 1973. I've got master and trainer in that. I've got tons of other things that I've learned. I don't use any of them. What I've done is gone beyond what I've gone beyond the teachings
Mm-hmm.
where I'm sitting in the void listening to spirit. So in other words, whenever I have a client come in, I'll scan their energy and check what it is that they need. What is the single most important thing that they need in this moment?
Okay.
And then help them to put whatever information I'm getting into perspective in their lives, and how does it fit in? What do they have to learn, change? What has to go on for them to make the breakthrough, to experience whatever it is that they want.
Do
So
you work with clients via Skype?
yeah, 90% or more of my work right now is internationally via Skype.
Okay.
I also, one of my passions is, and this is, if people have an opportunity, my preference is to do workshops and I only do workshops of 18 people.
Okay.
Because what I do is I put together 2-day workshops, and the workshops have no format. So in
Like
other
my
words,
show. Like my show.
like your show. And when you're dancing with the energy, you don't need, you have to have some kind of a format, a start and an ending. But what happens in my workshops is people will come in and I'll say, okay, here's the rules. By the way, in my workshops, I figured out a way to break codependency in 2 days. I've also seen addictions break and clear in a day or two. So what happens is we get together, 18 people, and I like for them to have seen me talk, work, read my books or something, because I'm pretty direct. I don't beat around the bush. What happens
Yes.
is when I'm talking to someone, I'm very open and honest. There's no judgment. Whatever's happened, miscarriages, abortions. I've worked with murders. I've worked with people in the prison system. And I've worked at this point, I would say I'd worked with what, 10, 20,000 clients all over the world. And I've seen a lot. So there's no judgment on what a person's going through. We're just human beings doing the best we can.
You're true.
So what happens, people come into the room, we sit down, and I say, here's the agreements. Number 1, confidentiality. That's the most important. Number 2, speak your truth. Number 3, everyone in the room has to tell the truth. Whatever you're seeing, whatever you're feeling, talk to me. Stay present. And I don't care if you're the best healer in the world, no one does any healing except me in that group.
Yeah.
Because what happens is people start moving towards their breakthrough, and someone will put in healing energy and they'll come right back down again. I want the pot to boil over. I want to help that person to let go. And a lot of times when people have a lot of emotions coming up, someone else wants to pull them down, meaning well. But what happens, those emotions, that energy doesn't get a chance to really process and release.
Okay.
So
This is very disturbing, the image that just came to my head, but there's a second one that goes with it. It's for people to heal. They have, like you said, your pot has to boil. It's like, here we go. It's a pimple. You have to let the pimple pop before it can heal. A volcano has to erupt so that it can grow. So yeah, understanding that.
now here's the thing with that. That eruption can be very gentle.
Mm-hmm.
That eruption does not have to be traumatic.
No.
However, it has to be released. Or when you shift it, it transmutes.
Mm-hmm.
You're right, it does have to come up to the surface. Now, okay, they're having fun with me upstairs, so I'm going to play.
Let's do it.
You know how you make popcorn? You know, you got the pot and you heat it, and it takes a while and you heat it. And all of a sudden, one kernel goes pop, and then another one goes pop, and then all of a sudden they go pop, 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 pop. That's what happens in the workshops. Now, the interesting part of the workshops is that when in the first hour or two, people, they're ready to kill me. It's okay. Because I'll keep saying, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. What'd you say? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Because people will speak in negative languaging. I don't want this. I can't do that.
You did that to me once.
And I will not hear a person until they language in a healthy way. A lot of what goes on, see, we have to think something, we say it, then we hear it, it goes back in our mind. So one of the things I'm very attuned to is a person's languaging.
Okay.
And if I can help them to shift their languaging, their whole life shifts.
True.
So during the first hour or so of the workshop, 2 hours, people get so pissed off at me because I keep saying, Michael, I've said it to you. And I say, no, I can't hear you. What'd you say? And then finally they get it. The whole energy in the workshop changes.
Now, a workshop usually lasts about how long?
Days. The workshop lasts 2 days, and it's usually from 9 in the morning till 7 at night, nights, both days. And what I found is the workshop, and all I'll do is say, who wants to work next? But I'll watch, and what happens is, I talked about the popcorn, someone over here will go ahead and get triggered.
Yeah.
Their issue will come up. Then it'll trigger 2 or 3 or 4 other people in the room, and we just keep on working till that issue is clear.
Okay.
And I had one person who went ahead, they organized 12 workshops for me over in England. And the woman said, Michael, every workshop is totally different. None of them are the same. But you always wind up in the same place.
Yeah.
Because the closing circle, the energy is so sacred, and the energy is so pure, where there's so much love in the room, and everyone is loving themselves. So I also do a fire walk on the second day, and I don't have live coal. I just have 2 pieces of tape on the ground. But I can see when a person stands in front of the fire whether their energy crashes there, or as they're stepping across the line, or halfway as they're walking through it, or just as they're ready to graduate or walk the fire and complete it. I can tell and hear pretty much what's going on in their mind, what they're saying to themselves. I can see when the energy crashes. And there's something called entrainment. And entrainment is when you've got 3 or 4 grandfather clocks in the same house, and all of a sudden they're all in synchronicity with each other, or you have 3, 4 women on their menstrual cycle in a house, and they'll all align to the same energy. Well, my workshop, cancel the energy that I have in the workshop when I'm teaching and when I'm working with people is so strong that their intuition starts opening up, their energy starts clearing, and by the middle end of the workshop, they're actually seeing what I'm seeing and picking up what I'm picking up. So the workshops are very, very powerful. And that's part of my joy and happiness. So if there's people who are in your listening audience who think that or feel that they could organize a workshop in your area, I would love to talk to you.
Oh, there you go. That's that one. So if anybody has an idea that they can hold a workshop and talk to Michael right now, Michael, you're in, where are you at?
I'm in Virginia Beach, Virginia right now.
He'll leave the beach to come and see us. I think I'll take the beach to him. In the chat room, Scott has asked, have you ever found anyone so emotionally repressed that no matter what they try to do, they can't seem to get to the explosion?
Absolutely. Yeah, if someone, okay, when energy is moving,
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to work with it. But if you've had a shock or trauma that's so severe, they've shut down, it takes a lot of skill, faith, and trust for both parties for that person to open up. Anyone that has shut down that completely has a reason why they're shut down that completely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that I have done in talks is I'll have a balloon and I'll stick a pin in it and it'll go pop. Because that's what way a lot of us are. We're holding in so much stuff. And when we release it, it's like a balloon popping.
Yeah.
I've worked with Vietnam veterans. I've lived with them up on the Olympic Peninsula west of Seattle. I've worked with and met some special forces people in England. I had one guy, he was huge, a lot bigger than me, a lot stronger than me. And I met him in Newcastle. He walked in to visit a friend of mine, and I started walking towards him, and he said, "Michael, don't do that, I'll kill you." And I just kept walking. I threw my arms around him. He was not an older guy. He was fairly young. And
Mm-hmm.
he exploded in tears, hysterical crying, and we both fell down on the floor, but I wouldn't let him go. I just kept my arms around him. Anyone that has been in a situation, whether it be war, uh, uh, physical abuse, sexual abuse, anything like that, any kind of trauma, one of the ways that people survive is they shut down because they don't think that they can handle it. So yes, I've worked with people like that, and it's about creating the safety and the trust. If you don't have the safety, if you don't have the trust, it's more challenging. And I've seen things happen in busy hospitals where I've had people just explode. I was actually at a party at a yoga center in one of the major cities, and there was a woman there that was one of the heads of Homeland Security. And I hope she wasn't carrying a gun at the time, but I met her at a party, at a Christmas party. And she said something to me, and I don't know what happened. I just turned around and said something. It wasn't flip, it was boom, right to her core. And she exploded in tears and just fell down in emotional breakthrough. And I
Mm-hmm.
talked about the other gentleman who was the corporate trainer. He exploded too. So when you have the ability to touch that center core point in a person,
Mm-hmm.
things can happen very, very quickly. Again, if you're working through the layers of the onion, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But when you're working directly on a core situation, it can be, I hate to use the term explosive, but it's like taking a bottle cap off the bottle, poof, and all the air comes out, or all the whatever it is comes out.
Yeah.
I would rather have it out than in.
Very true. But there are some people that are that difficult that they don't understand that out is much better than in because they're afraid of letting go of their control.
Well, if they've been hurt and they're scared, of course you don't want to let go of control.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing another story to tell you. There's two stories that are very similar. I've been around a lot of people, especially women, who are very petrified of big knives. And I've never had a person who was scared of a knife take more than, I would say, 3 minutes before I could walk and actually hold the blade of the knife against their throat, the sharp end, and they were fine. So what I would do is if someone told me they're really afraid of knives, and I've met some people, they really freak out, is I would say, okay, tell me how far. I'd pick the biggest knife I could find, and I said, tell me how far to stand back so you feel safe. And they'll say, okay, I feel safe there. And I said, okay, now I'm going to walk towards you very slowly. You're in control. Whenever you want me to stop, just say stop.
Mm-hmm.
Take a few steps, and they'll say stop. And I'll say, okay, breathe. I said, tell me when you feel safe enough for me to take another couple of steps. I take another couple of steps. Well, like I said, I've never taken more than 3 minutes or so. And what I'll do is I'll tell them, okay, now I'm going to hold the back end of the knife, not the sharp part, against your throat.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me if that's okay. And then they say, okay, I'm okay with it now. And then I'll say, okay, can I turn the sharp edge against your throat? They take a deep breath, and usually they say yes. Now, that shows us that a lot of our fears can be transmuted pretty quickly. There's another situation where I was with a woman who had never been in water in her life. She was in her mid to late 30s. So again, I had another friend stay on one side of her, take her hand. I took the other hand, and we walked into the water up to our ankles. And I said, are you okay? And after, then she said, okay. And I said, well, let's go in a little bit further. Well, within a minute or two, within a couple of minutes, she was playing in the water and she was fine.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing is about trust. It's about support. It's about being with someone 100%. I'm going to take a risk here. I could never trust my father. I never knew when I was going to be supported and when I was going to be violated.
Okay.
So for me, I know in my heart and in my soul what it's like not to be safe. And being safe is one of my big issues in learning in this lifetime. So I know how to create the safety for other people because I can feel them. I can feel their pain. I can feel their fears. I can feel their insecurities. And I will stay right with them. I was actually in a workshop in Southeast Asia where there were some things happening, and I went up in front of the group, and there were over 100 people there. And I said this, I said, I'm the kind of crazy guy that would go to the gates of hell and make sure you got out safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm sorry, I said the wrong thing. I would go into the middle of hell, stand there, help you to get out, and make sure you got out safely. And maybe because of the violation I felt, because of the insecurity, the fear, I'm highly attuned to what other people feel, want, need.
Mm-hmm.
Whew, okay.
Okay. And the dolphins swim nicely.
Oh, I love dolphins.
Yeah.
I love dolphins. I love animals. When I was down in Florida, I found a place to sneak and camp out, and there was a little jetty there of rocks, and there were a bunch of big iguanas there, and obviously wild ones. And I saw them, and a couple of times I went over, and they all ran away. And one time I sat there and I said, "Okay, please let me come out there." And I slowly went out, and there was this huge iguana that I was able to sit next to and actually pet. I mean, I don't know what would have happened if it would have bit me, but
You would not be on my show.
that's true. And what's interesting is animals know, children know. Children know. And what I know is that we've all come here to learn things. We've come here and have chosen, a lot of us, especially those of us that are advanced souls. I talk about this a lot in my book. Only an advanced soul would attract and take on a high level of abuse or a high level of challenge. Because a beginner soul wouldn't do that. They wouldn't be able to handle it. So when you see someone going through hell, going through a lot of challenges, or going through a lot of drugs, addictions, whatever it may be, you know that these people are pretty high souls. They're pretty advanced souls. I'll be quiet for a minute. Go ahead, talk to me.
No, you don't have to be quiet. You have everybody enthralled. Okay, remember everybody, if you have a question or a comment, please put it in capitals so that I can pay attention. But Carrie, I did catch what you said. Carrie said when you were talking about your workshops, and I asked how long it took, she said, it's like the workshop where you start on the third day and no one sleeps, when everyone is exhausted and starts letting go all there. It's all just warming up. Because you said you wait. There's no... All right. Yep. So I got to quickly move that one there. So it's like when you say she friends went to it. That's what a workshop that she went to, or friends went to. They started on the third day. So you're telling me that nobody slept for the first 2 days, Harry?
See,
No one slept. Ooh, trust me, I can sleep standing up.
See, there's a number of ways of doing things. And I'm not going to mention the workshops, but there's some workshops where I'm not going to say they drive you into exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe you need to do that. What I want is the people conscious and present. I've only met 5 people in my entire life. 5. They're more than 30% energetically present in their physical bodies. So what happens is, here we are, and what we want to do, what a lot of people do, is they want to get away from their pain.
Mm-hmm. What
happens is we learn to split off and disassociate. We learn, thinking that we're going to be safe, we want to get away from the fire, we want to get away from the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Reality is, if you stay with it, you take total responsibility, you breathe through it, then what happens, you transmute it, boom, and you don't pick up the karma. It's just the opposite of what people think. So what I help people to do is to get present in their physical bodies. I help them to become independent, internally referenced, and authentic. And for me, people don't need to put on a pretense of who they are. I could care less how much money people have, or, I taught art. Okay. I have taught all over the world. I've taught in Kuwait, Dubai, Abu Dhabi. I've worked with strict Muslims in burqas. These are women doctors. We had to stop a number of times during the day so they could pray. I've stayed with the Muslim people. In fact, it's kind of funny. They said, Michael, you're more Muslim than we are, because they watched me, the way I interacted, the way I ate, and was with the people. So being able to blend in with people, being able to share with them. When I was in Bali, Indonesia, and other places, I was in hospitals working with the poorest of the poor of the poor. Who a person is this lifetime may not be who they were another lifetime. They weren't.
Mm-hmm.
So I just find it very interesting to go with the flow. Okay, there's another two things that they're telling me to share. When I went over to Southeast Asia the first time, I was told, Michael, be very, very careful. Always know that you're looking at God, no matter what you're looking at. Because they said, if you don't, you're going to have your heart ripped out of you, because I'm too sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was, one of the stories I tell is when I was over in Bangkok, and I was in this big marketplace, and this place was huge. And I could see in the distance this guy coming towards me on a skateboard. However, the kid had no legs. He was sitting on a skateboard, had no legs. He had gloves on his hands, and he was pushing himself through, and he was smiling. And I saw him in the distance, and our eyes locked. And as he was coming towards me, he went, and I looked at him and went, and he went whizzing by me, never stopped to ask for money, anything. And that's in my book, the story. And the editor, when she read it, she started crying. So part of it is understanding that no matter who we're looking at God expressing. And to just keep holding that space of God expressing. I do a lot of work, coaching, working with entrepreneurs, helping them. I know I haven't talked about that a lot. People that are in sales, marketing, why are they successful or why are they not successful? What is it that they need? So again, I'll tell you another story. I was over in Europe, and I was invited by a friend to his board of directors meeting. He said, Michael, just keep your mouth shut and sit in the corner and watch, which I can't do. It's impossible.
I was going to say that, but okay.
So what happened was, I went to this meeting. There was about a dozen people or more in this room, and they were talking about the company and what was happening, and I was just sitting listening. Then they said, oh, we just hired this new marketing woman, and she's going to be fantastic, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm sitting there going very uneasy. And as I was getting more and more uneasy, I finally opened my mouth and said, why are you hiring this woman? She's only going to be there for 90 days. And everyone laughed at me and mocked me. And again, the only person I knew was the owner of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got some phone calls 90 days later, 85 days later. Michael, we should have listened to you. We fired her. If we would have kept her 1 or 2 more days, we would have had a big lawsuit on our hands. So I've worked with people looking at what is the structure of their company. There were people I met in Southeast Asia. One person invited me to their company, and he had a big software company. And again, I met him socially. He asked me to come and look at his company. So I'm walking through he asked me to come down with him. So I met him, went down to the company, walked through it, and I said, "What are your sales?" And he said, 1.4 million. And I said, "Give me a couple of minutes." So I walked through the company, didn't really talk to anyone, never saw the books or anything else. And I said, "You should be making 4 million in sales." And he looked at me and he said, "How the heck did you know that?" And I said, "My intuition." He said, "Well, that's what we figured too, but we can't do it. We can't get over 1.4 million. They were just at break even."
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they had hit the other figure, they would have had, that was all profit.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have had 2.6 million in profit. So he asked me, "What do we need to change?" And what I said was the only thing he needed to change was his management style. And then I made the mistake of telling him and the guy that was underneath him, these were the two owners, that they were passive aggressive and that I could help them in 3 months to turn the company around. Well, they're being passive aggressive. They didn't follow through. But again, I don't know whatever happened to the company. But using intuition, reading energy patterns, asking, how can I serve? What is it that I can do to help these people? That's all I do. What is the single most important thing that I could say or do right now to help this person to improve the quality of their life? Talk to me, Darlene.
Tell me what I can do to find that 1.4 million was what they were making, and it wasn't enough. I'm sorry. I could be happy with that. There goes my Mm-hmm.
No, 1.4 million is what their sales were, but they were at break even.
Okay.
4 million is what my intuition said their potential was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also what they, in their board of directors meetings, came up with. But they could never reach it because they kept sabotaging themselves.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of people do that.
As an outside person,
Mm-hmm.
as an observer, it's much easier to see what's going on and to look at it and tune into the energy.
Very true. Very true. That's when people ask your opinion. When people ask my opinion on things, I give them two sides I sit on the fence and I give them both sides of the fence, and then I tell them, okay, now you got to choose which side you're going to choose and which path you want to work.
Most people want to stay right on the fence, and they wind up getting a lot of splinters.
My bum's very well padded. It doesn't get splinters.
I'm not talking about you.
I know. No, this is you best behave yourself, Mr. Stevenson, otherwise I'll message Helen. So if somebody wants and is not able to get to one of your
Workshops.
Thank you, workshops. I couldn't figure out the word. And I know you would rather do workshops. Guru says he prescribes watching the Camino de Santiago. He just finished that. Would you be willing to connect with them and work with them through Skype?
Oh, absolutely. I do a lot of private sessions with people. And as I mentioned, I do coaching, mentorship. Mm-hmm. I finished Mastering the Human Experience, the books, Your Soul Journey on Earth. And now I'm working on a book on intuition. What is intuition? How does it change? What's different from intuition versus intellect versus anyway? So I'm I'm in the process of writing that book to help people get in touch with their intuition. And our intuition is a natural part of us. This whole energy world is a natural part of us. However, most of us forget that. and we start doing our best to work with our logical mind. However, if we can incorporate our intuition, if we can incorporate reading energy, if we can incorporate loving ourselves, being kind, gentle, nurturing with ourselves, then we're operating at a whole different level.
Very true. Some people just haven't gotten there yet, but they're working on it.
I think we're all works in process. I am. And we're here. Everyone is doing the best they can with the tools that they have. And there are times I'm going to take a risk and share a couple more things with you. There are times when I've gone through initiations, spiritual initiations, back in November 11th, 2011, I went through an energy shift. And it was as if someone pulled the plug out of my energy, and all my energy just collapsed. And that happened in California. I flew from there to London and then to New Zealand. And a friend of mine, his name's Jasmine, he took one look at me. He's a Sikh, and he threw me on his couch and he told me to stay there. And I was actually there for 2 to 3 months, where my energy was.
Go ahead.
Nice to have a little music. Where I had no energy. I literally could not get up off the couch. I could barely walk to the bathroom. And what happened was Jasmine was cooking for me. He was rubbing my feet, praying over me. And it took me about 2-3 months before my energy rebalanced. And I was kind of concerned. And he would laugh at me. He said, Michael, after this, you're going to be on a much higher plane. Mm-hmm. So there are times when we go through things, and it's important. It helps when we can figure out or understand what is going on. Are we going through a recalibration? What is happening to our energy? I know there are a lot of us on the spiritual path that are very, very sensitive to energy. So one of the things that I used to do is I had a circle of friends where we would call each other and check in. So in other words, if I was feeling down that day, I would call my friends and say, okay, how do you feel? And if all 3 of us or 4 of us were down, we knew it was planetary.
Okay.
If it was only one of us, we knew it was a personal issue. So there's a lot of times on when the energy is scrambled, but it's not us. And if we don't have a way of knowing what's us and what isn't us, especially for those of us that are extremely sensitive, we may take everything personal. When in reality, it has nothing to do with us. We're just a receiver. So that's part of it. Another part that I'll talk about is a lot of the people, Buddhist, Christian, Jewish, a lot of the religious practices is about nirvana. It's about becoming more spiritual. It's about moving up, ascending. However, when I was with the Maoris in New Zealand and the Hawaiians, for them, it was about hunkering down. It was about getting into their physical body. It's about having a physical experience, because we all are spiritual beings having a human experience. But a lot of us want to go up, get away from the pain, be spiritual, and that's called a spiritual bypass. where if we really dealt with our feelings and our emotions and really faced them, which is the work that I do, then it helps us to get more fully into our physical body and will actually speed up the healing process and our transformation process.
Very
It's
true.
almost the opposite of what our thinking process would be.
Carrie said that she's sorry guys, that was Windows helpline, by the way. I don't have a Windows computer. I'm it's my usual line. I just slammed the phone and hung up with the woman. Carrie says sounds like an ascension. She's in an ascension group, which is very comforting. One of the things that I've noticed lately is that, like what you said, is that scam. Is that you had your friends to connect with, that you could call and figure out whether it was just a personal thing or it was out there in the divine. What I've noticed lately is that people post it on Facebook, people post it online, and which a lot of people go, well, why are you going to tell people you're having a crappy day? Fortunately or unfortunately, that connects different people, that connects the dots, where people will sit there and I was going through a rough time, and two very special people who are very close to me were going through a rough time, and we each thought we were separate until we spoke to each other, until we saw our comments on Facebook. Then it was like, it's not us. Oh, that hurt. It's not us. It's the universe. And then I had a guest on my show in the middle of this craziness, and she said it was because there was a change and an upgrade of guides that was happening, and that we as humans didn't know how to take it. We just kind of settled it. And somebody said, oh, well, it's Mercury retrograding, and it's whatever was happening at that time. And it sort of, it sort of answered all the questions. So it's great when people are able to talk, and it's not just a one-on-one thing. It's for me, I think that as much as people dislike Facebook and putting all your business out there on for everybody to see, sometimes your business out there saying, I'm having a really crappy week. Is anybody else having one? Just put that out there and see how many people connect. And then you can figure out whether, where to start from there. So, yeah.
I mean, part of what is really important is for people to be authentic, open, and honest. However, because a lot of us have been judged and criticized, it's challenging. One of the things I make very clear, I want to tell you this story because I think it's a very important story.
Mm-hmm.
I was overseas, and a guy called me up. He was pretty young. He was in his early 20s. He said, Michael, I'm hooked on hard drugs and alcohol, and I'm really having a rough time. Can you help me? And I said, are you still using? He says, yes. And normally I will not see someone when they're using.
Mm-hmm.
And, but my guides came through and said, see him. So I said, okay, I'll see you. He said, I'll be over in an hour. I said, no, you won't. I said, he says, when's the first appointment? I said, 9 o'clock at such and such a day. I don't know, 4 or 5 days away. I did that on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Showed up 8, 9 in the morning, drunk, on drugs, driving. He was in his early 20s. And this is in Europe. And again, I start saying, I won't see you because, you're using. And my guides came through and said, see him. So I did. And we start the session, and my guides say, told me to tell him, you've got to come off cold turkey. He said, my doctor said it could kill me. And I said, I can't tell you what to do. I'm not a medical doctor. However, it's your responsibility, but my guides and teachers are telling you have to come off cold turkey. I said, you make the decision. I said, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm just telling you what I'm getting, and it's up to you what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, let's go for it. Okay, so we did a session, I don't know, it was about an hour. He left. A week later, I start getting all these phone calls. What'd you do to the guy? What did you do to the guy? What'd you do to the guy? I said, what do you mean? He's clean and sober. You know, he's had a total turnaround. Everything's great. Okay, fast forward a year. I'm in London giving a talk, and this guy walks up to me and said, Michael, do you remember me? I said, no, I'm sorry, because I'm in another state when I work with clients. And he said, I'm the guy that was on drugs and alcohol. And I went, oh, okay. So I'm giving my talk, and I said to him, I said, would you like to come up on stage and tell your story? So he did. Everyone gave him a big round of applause. Finished my talk. A week later, I start getting phone calls again. What'd you do to the guy? What'd you do to the guy? What'd you do to the guy? And I said, what do you mean? He said, he's back on drugs and alcohol again. And I called him up. I said, what's going on? You're bad-mouthing me all over town. What did I do? And he said, you're human. And I said, yeah, I never said I wasn't human. He said, but I thought you were a god who waved a magic wand over my head. I'm not strong enough to heal myself or to stay sober. And the guy crashed and went back on drugs and alcohol. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this story is because I talk to people about the times in my life when I was down so low, I didn't know if I'd make it another day.
Mm-hmm.
I talk and share about the times when I lost all my money, or I had an oil drilling and exploration company back in 1983 to 85, and the government changed the rules, and I had to declare bankruptcy and lost everything and went deeply in debt. There's a number of times in my life when, you know, after divorce, after this, after that, after the other thing, where we have a choice to give up or to brush ourselves off, get back up, and keep moving forward. And I'm not saying it's easy. Those are the times that test people's souls, is when they lose everything or they lose a loved one or something that's important. So part of what I'm willing to do is to be vulnerable, is to be present. I don't have all the answers. I don't even know all the questions. However, I am willing to be present. And one of the things that Spirit came through and said to me is, Michael, you know how to work with people now who were the heads of a company or organization, and they've gotten laid off and lost everything. You know how to sit with people that have lost all hope. It's easy when things are flowing. It's easy when everything's flowing our way. But when things start falling all apart, or they have fallen all apart, or we've lost all hope, that's the time that we're really tested to see what we're made of. And I'll go back to what I said is about, if you're going through hell, don't get off the train and live there. Get help, get support. And there's things I want to say, but I'm not going to say on the air. However, I will say this. If you're committed, I'll work with you. I'll help you and support you as best I can. And don't want to go any further than that.
Well, one thing I like about you, Michael, and I got that when we first had the conversation, is that you are human. And
Yep.
you do show your ouchies and your boo-boos, and that's the nice way of putting it. Because a lot of people who are teachers and mentors and won't show that they hurt. And it's easier to, I think it's easier to help somebody when you've already been there. And you've been there. So this what makes you really good at helping the rest of us who are there, in different levels, people who are, having problems with drugs, with alcohol, with businesses, and with whatever. You feel, what the feelings are, because some people are really great and they're going to stand up there and they're going to preach to you and they're going to tell you how to do this, and this is what you should do. You should do this, and this. Thank you. Have a nice day. And they're off. You're going to do that, but you're also giving examples of how you've been there, done that, which makes for me personally, it makes me more easier to listen to you than listen to somebody who just sort of preaches and then walks away.
I had something happen. I'm on LinkedIn, and I connected with someone who lives in Bhutan. Mm-hmm. And I haven't been to Bhutan, but I've always wanted to go to Bhutan. And he wrote about he was starting an entrepreneur school there. And I wrote to this guy and I said, I would love to be on your board of directors, be part of your entrepreneurship business school. I said, I don't want a penny. It's not about money. I want to be on your board. I don't want any money. I'll help you all I can. Tell me what you need. And someday I hope I'll get to Bhutan and to see it. And I think I scared him because initially, and I asked him and I called him on WhatsApp. We had a great conversation, and I don't know if he'll ever follow through. However, I love doing things like that, working with indigenous people. I like working with different cultures, and when people can come together and share their gifts, I mean, my background was running companies, corporations, doing corporate turnaround. I love doing that. I love the challenge. I love the opportunity to help people to reach their full potential. And when I saw this guy from Bhutan, my little kid inside just got all excited going, wow, this could be fun. Mm-hmm. So again, if there's anyone in the radio audience that is looking at projects they're looking to do, I love doing those kind of things and helping people to build that team, that organization. Back to you.
Yeah, you do listen very well to people and their dreams. You listen to mine. Well, it's pretty much the end of the show. If anybody has any questions for Michael, please put them in the chat room. If not, y'all have his email address. Y'all can message him. He's got Facebook. He's got LinkedIn. He's got WhatsApp. You will figure out a way to connect with him. I am very, very grateful that you reached out to me on LinkedIn and made me glad that I reconnected with LinkedIn very much. I'll send him an apology letter for the tearing that I gave him for the shit that I went through. But I thank you very much. And like I said, I'm going to get your books. I'm waiting for the third book, but I'm going to get the first two books. And then we'll have you back and we will discuss the books. And I might have a little surprise when that comes up that that show with the books. So that means you really need to have to come back. Thank you very, very much, sweetheart.
Thank you
Everybody
very
in the chat room, Brian, who's been very quiet, which is really strange, but Pauline must be up, so you're behaving yourself. Carrie, Cheryl, Donna, Fellini, Guru, Jackie, Jennifer's Journey, and Scott Stevenson. Everybody, thank you very much for being here and having a great time. And like I said, connect with Michael, have a conversation. Really, really good guy. And I'll let you say goodbye.
Thank you very much for having me on, and I want to thank everyone that's been listening. And I just want to say that we all deserve to be happy, to be loved, to be loving, to accomplish our dreams. And even though sometimes we may feel like we're on our own, totally, I want to say isolated and abandoned, but I will say that, that there's a lot of support from spirit. And I'm saying it because I need to hear it too. And I just want to say God bless everybody. Thank you. Namaste.
Night, everybody.